All right, welcome to a new episode of the You Got the Ron Dude podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'm psyched. This episode is all about Star Wars. My experience with it, how I was introduced to it, talking all the movies, the trilogies, the OG, the prequels, the sequel trilogy, everything in between, all the shows. Well, not all of them. I haven't watched all of them, but mostly the live action shows, talking about video games, toys, all that fun stuff. Everything in one episode. I record everything in segments and title them so it's easy to find. If you want to listen to everything, or if you just want to hear about specific things, check it out here on Anchor, where you can also leave a voice message. Otherwise, I'll have links to my socials and other places you can listen to the podcast in the description, so check it out. I'm going to be doing my Star Wars impressions as well, so I'm psyched. Yeah, we're talking all that stuff in this episode, so let's get right into it. So the earliest Star Wars memory I have is growing up. I was going to say what the house looked like. It doesn't matter. I was a kid, so probably like, I want to say early 90s. We'd play video games in the basement. We had the old NES system set up and the same TV. My dad would watch TV on television. And we'd go downstairs, and I remember seeing, it was a Battle of Hoth, The Empire Strikes Back. He was watching that. My sister and I, we didn't even really know about Star Wars or what it was, but that I have, it's like a GIF in my head, so that's pretty cool. That's the earliest memory that I have. Now, 1997, the special edition theatrical re-release. My sister and I, we went and saw A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back in theaters. We saw them back to back. I'm trying to remember, because we hadn't seen the movies before, I don't think. Maybe we saw a clip or something. That I wish I could remember why we went to see those. But, yeah, we went to the theater and watched them, and I'll never forget, during Empire, my ears were hurting. You know, because in the theater, it's very loud. I don't think I've experienced that since. Like, I usually don't see movies back to back, but I was about 14 when we saw those, and I remember my ears hurting, and that was the first time I saw dismemberment. Not only on TV, I didn't really see any in real life, but when Luke got his hand chopped off, I mean, that scarred me for a while. That messed me up. So, when we watched the movies on video at home with friends, I would always excuse myself and go to the bathroom when that scene is coming up. So once the duel starts, they get out onto the catwalk, and I'm like, I have to go pee. And on the VHS, you could tell where it skipped. I fast forwarded it just to get around that scene, which is too bad because it's, you want to get the first part of the lightsaber duel and then the big reveal, I'm your father. So I would kind of skip around that and everything, and I remember having the set of trading cards, and they had that shot, that clip of Luke and his hands off to the side, and I was like, oh, these cards are torturing me. But eventually all the stuff you see on TV and in movies, like now, it's like you don't even flinch at that. But at the time, and I was like, this is PG? Holy cow. But yeah, seeing them in theaters. And then I remember Return of the Jedi wasn't coming out for a little while. So I remember being in the car with my dad and just picking his brain about Return of the Jedi. Just asking him, like, what's going to happen with this, with that? Who lives, who dies and stuff. And then I was hoping, like, I don't think I asked because I was embarrassed about the, being scared of the dismemberment thing. But I don't think I asked, like, hey, does anybody, like, lose a hand in this? And, of course, in Jedi, we see Darth Vader, his, well, artificial limb, his hand gets cut off. That I was like, okay. Because you see the little sparks and you see the wires and stuff. So that I think I could tolerate. That I don't remember ever skipping over. But, yeah, so we saw the special editions first. And then obviously the OG trilogy, unaltered. You must come with me to Alderaan. Learn the ways of the Force. And I definitely remember owning the special edition VHS tapes. I think we still have those and the original unaltered ones. Because the special edition, I remember like the gold and the black casing. And then the original unaltered, which over the years, people are like, when they do the re-releases, you know, when you have like new formats like DVD, Blu-ray, even digital, and people are like, well, these are special editions, these are altered. We want like the uncut, you know, the blue magic, if you will. And it's interesting that those are hard to find. I think they are. I mean, unless a collector wants to give them up. Like, you can't just go to the store. Even online, I don't think they have those available. For the most part. I think it's like special edition. And they've had like, you know, the 97, 2004, 2011, and maybe something after that. I'm not sure. And after seeing Return of the Jedi, I mean, that version of Luke Skywalker is so uplifting, positive, because he was like a threat, you know, when he's in Jabba's palace, but he's also very wise. It's like he'd been a Jedi for decades. And it's almost like, how long after Empire is this? Like, he's so different. And walking around school, in my head, I was Luke Skywalker, that version of him. And I'll talk later about the, you know, the sequel trilogy, how I felt about that, his character, the portrayal. Because it is kind of disappointing. It's also sad. It's probably good for the story to see what happens to him. But that version, that Return of the Jedi, that'll always stay with me. And, yeah, it was just great. Good times, and I was so fresh, so new to it. And the last time I went trick-or-treating, this is over 20 years ago, a little bit. I remember ordering a costume online, and this is even before like social media. I think just before MySpace even launched. So maybe Friendster was around. Point being, I ordered it off of probably Amazon at the time. And it was a Jedi robe. I'm trying to remember what else. I don't think I had like a pretend lightsaber or anything. I just got the robe. It cost me around $80, I remember. But speaking of social media, my first MySpace page was all decked out in Star Wars, specifically Revenge of the Sith. Because that had come out a year before. I was obsessed with it. All the action. Of course, the downfall of Anakin. And, yeah, because now, I mean, maybe a photo. You know, like I love Rogue One even more than I did Revenge of the Sith. And even Solo. I love those movies. But nowadays it's kind of like, well, I'll tell people about it, but I wouldn't, you know, dedicate anything to it, if that makes sense. Well, unlike my parents' generation, I was psyched because when we saw the 97 special editions in theaters, my sister and I, we didn't have to wait long for the prequel trilogy. Because that was already announced around that time, I believe. Because episode 1 came out in 99. And at the time, I'm sure we were confused because it's like, wait, I thought we saw 1, 2, and 3. And so it was nice because, maybe 2 years until those came out in theaters? And we'll dive deep into those movies. But, yeah, because my dad, that was 16 years after Return of the Jedi. And I was actually born a few days after Return of the Jedi came out, back in 83. So how about that? And we were lucky enough to have a bunch of different toys, all Star Wars based, back in those days, like the little figurines I remember having, because, you'd how do you say, I don't even remember, you'd play with the toys, the action figures, you'd have them in little saber fights and whatnot, stuff like that. And I still have a bag of a variety of old toys. I think mostly the Phantom Menace stuff from the underwater place, whatever that was called, where Jar Jar's from. Don't worry, I'm not going to say that name a lot in this podcast. No, don't go anywhere. No, please. Okay? I'm going to do an impression later. No, wait. That's it, okay? Well, maybe during the review of the movie, but we'll just say that one character. The Jamaican puppet, okay? Just stay with me. Believe in me. Yeah, those toys, and like I mentioned earlier, they weren't trading cards, but they were just stills from The Empire Strikes Back, and I think from the other movies as well, the original trilogy. I'm not sure. But, yeah, good times with those. You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short. Okay, let's talk about it. Episode 1, Star Wars, The Phantom Menace. Great title. At the time, we're thinking this could be epic. Anakin, I would have preferred flashbacks of him as a kid. Little Annie Dennis, the Phantom Menace. Because that young, even when he's, angry, when he's at the council meeting, when he does that kind of mean face, it's he's just a kid. And I think flashbacks would have worked better. We have Anakin at, what was he in Attack of the Clones, 19, 20? At that age in episode 1. And I understand they found him when he was really young. That doesn't really bother me. But they have hints along the way. The relationship between him and Qui-Gon, who I would have killed off in episode 2. And Obi-Wan, the relationship, the falling out. And then we go to flashbacks for more context as to what happened. And then slowly we realize a lot of it has to do with his mother. And the movie at the time, it was huge. Made a lot at the box office, of course, but people were kind of is it a kid's movie? It's PG, but you have Qui-Gon and Darth Maul who stole the movie. And oddly enough, those characters, Darth Maul had a cameo in that Solo movie, which I liked, but it's kind of finally something. Why didn't he and or Qui-Gon get their own series? I'd still like to see that. Because those characters are really the heart of the film. Maybe not Maul, but Qui-Gon. And in 2, we learn that Count Dooku had trained him. That's interesting. Another flashback. What happened with that? They're both still alive? All their limbs? Just a falling out? Talk to you later. Take care. What happened with that? And of course, the Jamaican puppet. See, I told you, not going to name him. Because even kids, that was designed for children to sell toys. And it seems like it's one of those things, even kids were what is this? Which is very odd. Because you have little Anakin, 7, 8 years old. And, some action that doesn't do a lot of damage. Except at the end of the saber fight, of course. At the end, but along the way, it's just kind of confusing at times. Because they want to start the relationship with Padme, between her and Anakin. But she's, 5 years older than him in the movie? And he's just a little boy. So, again, I would have advanced Anakin's age, do flashbacks to when he's a kid, a little boy. But the romance thing, it just doesn't work. I'll talk more about it in my review of Attack of the Clones. But especially for a PG movie, the movie as a whole is very entertaining. There's a lot going on, but it's all about that conflict and whispers of the Sith returning, what's going on. And it's great if you haven't seen the original trilogy when we meet Palpatine in episode 1. You have no idea who he is. And whereas others are like, oh, him, oh wow, he's taking his time infiltrating everybody. And it's interesting to see his rise of power. And he gets a lot of good screen time. Because there's a lot of characters, a lot going on, but it's all very well balanced. And the action at the end is really good. Of course, on VHS, we just skipped right to the lightsaber duel. But then it would keep cutting to the action on the ground and the battle in space, which were okay. But little Anakin flying that ship, it's like, I don't know. It's just for a little kid, you're kind of like, go, Anakin, go hide somewhere. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. Whereas a 19, 20-year-old Anakin, you'd be rooting for him. It's like, how does he know how to fly so well and, use all the equipment and stuff and navigation and firearms? And then we flash back to him as a kid, maybe learning from somebody. Like, this is this kind of fighter, whatever, stuff like that. And you can't talk about the Phantom Menace without talking about the pod race. Well, I guess you can. I mean, it's not that it hasn't aged well, but at the time it was groundbreaking CGI. And I would argue we didn't need to see the entire race, every lap, because, those laps are pretty long. Because you're kind of like, oh, we're watching the whole thing. Okay, interesting. Now, if Anakin were, again, if he were 19 or 20 and racing for his freedom and maybe uses the Force against his enemies, or against the competitors, rather, and send them flying out, something like that, to where he earns his freedom, but it's like he kind of cheated, but there are no rules against using the Force. So maybe Qui-Gon's like, well, okay. But something like that. And the music, just to give it more intensity throughout. But at the time, there was that racer game. I actually bought that a while back. I believe it was for the N64 back in the day. It came out in 99 or 2000 or something. Maybe even 2001. But that was a lot of fun. And no one ever really talks about that, the pod race, just because, again, it was so long, the whole sequence. And, if Anakin had been in more danger, I think it would have been more compelling. But, I like watching the behind the scenes on how they did everything. And it looked pretty cool. And I haven't watched any of the movies on 4K, so I don't know if they, if the quality, the visuals have aged well or not. But, yeah, seeing it in theaters and that, that whole time, people were just like, oh my gosh, we're going to see Anakin turn to the dark side, Palpatine, his rise to power, But, one, it's not forgettable, it's very entertaining. Probably even watch it with your kids. But keep in mind, there is that, slice and a half scene. Which, for PG, it's like, really? So, all in all, I wouldn't say it's really rewatchable. It's really about, in this trilogy, the prequels, it's really about Revenge of the Sith. But of course, we're going to cover Attack of the Clones next. But it's kind of like everything you've been waiting for. The best they save for last. But this movie, overall, fun, exciting. I wish you could, if you weren't alive back then, or, if you were pretty young and, you wouldn't remember any of this, just that feeling of excitement from everyone. Just like all around the world, like episode 1, oh my gosh. But it's just like in Fanboys. If you haven't seen that, it's not a parody of the movies. It's just about them going to, I think, the Lucasfilm Ranch, and stealing a copy of The Phantom Menace. And at the end, they're like, hey guys, what if it sucks? But that was kind of what happened. Where it's not a terrible movie, but it just doesn't rank very high. But I do like that it was George's vision, something he'd been writing since, the first movies, the originals. So I do like that. But I'm curious, if they ever do retcon or whatever, or just flat out remake all the movies, what they would do differently as far as timeline, characters, and, all that other stuff. But that's it for my review of The Phantom Menace. Again, great title. Not misleading, but I believe that's to do with Palpatine and the Sith. So, great title. Good movie. Ewan McGregor, he's great. Perfect as Obi-Wan. We'll talk about the series later. Of course, Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn. And, of course, the saber fights. Oh, I almost forgot. Even that one in the desert on Tatooine between Qui-Gon and Darth Maul. They fight for 30 seconds? And it's still one of the best looking saber fights ever. And then, of course, the one at the end, I'd argue no Star Wars movie has topped that yet. And I'm curious why, too. But let me know what you think. If you're listening on Anchor, leave a voice message. Otherwise, leave some comments. And now on to Attack of the Clones. Oh, and I remember my dad told me when he first saw A New Hope in theaters, when it was just, Star Wars. Wasn't like episode 4 or anything. I think it was just A New Hope. When Obi-Wan mentions, he fought in the Clone Wars, everybody thought they said the Cologne Wars, which I pretty much said. And people were like, what, the Cologne Wars? You fought in the Cologne Wars? In the Perfume Crusades? Anyways, that's it for The Phantom Menace. That should do it. And now on to Attack of the Clones.
Begun, the Clone Wars have. Get to use my lightsaber, I will.
Okay, now for Attack of the Clones. I have this memory, this kind of gif in my head. It was at some MTV event, and I remember Jack Osborne saying something like, Yoda really surprised me. Keep in mind, no YouTube. That was a few years away. So when he said that, something like that, people were like, I have no idea what he's talking about. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But kind of like The Phantom Menace, a lot of hype. Trailers were great. But then you watch it and some stuff just didn't work. And there was a lot of criticism of Hayden. George obviously believed in him and kept him for episode 3, which was the perfect tone. And still, though, it was just the acting was a problem. I don't know how many takes they had of scenes now, but it just didn't work because Anakin just wasn't a threat. And for Attack of the Clones, when you saw the trailer, it's like, wait, is he gonna turn into Vader in this one? We didn't know. You were kind of hoping so. But the love story with him and Padme, it just doesn't work because she admits her love for him out of nowhere. We don't really spend enough time with her character to see her struggle with her emotions. And they had great chemistry, but ultimately it was kind of like, wait, do you love him? But that just didn't work. And Hayden, Life as a House is a great movie. He's terrific in that. I wish he'd brought that performance to Anakin. And, there are a lot of great characters in this movie, of course. And I liked everything with the clones and Kamino. Of course, Jango Fett's little Boba. But all in all, it's just... That's the thing about this trilogy. It's easy to follow the story. Doesn't branch off or anything, really. Because they weren't doing TV series back then. But at the same time, some things just didn't work. Now, the action, on the other hand, that Geonosis battle, that's one of my favorites of all time. The ground assault. Once Mace enters the scene, every time I get chills. It's beautifully shot. Mace, when he gets his saber out in that and he's in the action, it's great. And then, of course, the kind of aerial battle with the ships and that looked really cool. For the time, the effects, I imagine they still hold up in 4K. The lightsaber duel, or duels at the end, those... It's weird, because in my review of The Phantom Menace, I talk about no one's really gone bigger and better with the lightsaber duel, or even matched the Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan duel. And with this one, it's just kind of sloppy. Some of the shots don't work, like too many wide shots. And I don't know, because it should have worked, because the choreography was good. But ultimately, I'm thinking about like Dooku versus Obi-Wan, then of course Anakin. And the duel with Obi-Wan was good. And with Anakin, he gets his arm chopped off and then thrown back. Now Yoda, on the other hand, that surprised everyone back then. And that CG Yoda still holds up, I imagine, in 4K. That looks great. And with the saber thing, it's like he's moving around so fast, so many hits. And of course, they used the double for Count Dooku, because Christopher Lee, I believe, was in his 80s at the time when they were filming this. But some of the shots just didn't work. And yeah, Yoda's just all over the place. It's like, how do you keep up with him? Why don't he just force push him away? And then when they're using the Force on each other, I like that because they realize, like, we could just do this all day. But, yeah, and then, of course, Jango versus Obi-Wan. That works beautifully. That's another one of my favorite action sequences. It's really well done. Not too long, not too short. But, yeah, overall, the movie, it needed Qui-Gon. He was killed off too soon. And Anakin and his mother, you definitely felt his rage in that. But why didn't it show him killing all those, the Tusken Raiders? They just cut away from that. And ultimately, the story is good, but like Attack of the Clones, not really. The clones in this movie are on the side of the, essentially our heroes, if you want to call them that, the Jedi in that. Whereas Attack of the Clones, that'd be a good title for, an additional title for Revenge of the Sith, when they turn on them. But it really falls apart with the love story and separating Anakin and Obi-Wan so early on. And the tension between them is believable. But Anakin, you're not really rooting for him. Because you really want to see his rise, and maybe he gets on the council, and then a falling out. Because I was hoping, like, they'd all get along. And maybe they're like, well, we got to promote this kid, make him a Jedi Master. Because he'd been training, for over a decade. But it just doesn't work. I mean, Anakin just comes off as an a-hole. He's not likable at all. Kind of like Cyborg in the Justice League movie, or movies. Both versions. They're just like, this guy has a bad attitude. And in my review of Revenge of the Sith, we'll talk about, the falling out in that, which was better done than in this. But still, it's like, who are we rooting for? We know where all this is going, but you're kind of hoping like, oh, this is going to be so tragic. Oh, they're all getting along. Mace and Anakin, them fighting in 3, it's no shocker. Or not really fighting per se. But we'll get to that later. But in this, you just wanted to root for someone and then see that epic falling out, that tragedy, betrayal. And in this, it just didn't build it up. And then the love story just didn't work. It was just too soon, like out of the blue, I love you. Whereas Han and Leia had their moments. It was kind of a slow build-up. And with this, it was just like the writing and, Natalie's great and everything. But with this, it was just, we're kind of like, maybe they're not going to hook up. I don't know. But, not really rewatchable. I'll watch it, maybe every several years, all the way through. But definitely the action sequences stand out. Oh, because I mentioned Jango versus Obi, the space battle as well. That looked great. Those seismic charges, whatever they're called. And so the action in this really stands out. Maybe the best out of the trilogy. There's a lot of good stuff in Sith, which I'll get to. But Attack of the Clones, the Geonosis, all that was just brilliant. I love it. And Yoda coming to the rescue both times. But Phantom Menace gets it for the lightsaber duel. But let me know what you think in the comments. If you're listening on Anchor, leave a voice message. I'd love to hear from you. And now on to Revenge of the Sith. I've become more powerful than any Jedi. Even you. So Revenge of the Sith, arguably the best out of the trilogy. Really the one that everyone was waiting for. And I liked how gruesome that scene was, where Anakin gets chopped up. And then the burning, I didn't expect that. That was gruesome. And if they'd rated this PG, I'd be like, okay, chop one limb off. That's like saying the F word, like we'll give you one. But watching a man burn alive, I mean, that was Hayden's best performance in that movie. Because you really felt him suffering. But the falling out, I wanted there to be more of a betrayal. But still in the theater, I remember getting the chills. When Mace and the other Jedi, they come into Palpatine's office and draw their sabers. And I'm like, because that was so tense, so much build-up. And the saber fights, obviously there's a lot of controversy about Palpatine taking out the other Jedi so quickly, but when he killed them, I'm like, boo? Like, they each had what, maybe one line each? We didn't really get to know them. And when Palpatine does that hurling spin, I say hurling because it sounds like he's throwing up, that was still a badass move. That was really cool. And the fight with Mace was really well done. I know they had to use some CG, like a replacement on Palpatine's face, because Ian was pretty old. But still a great looking fight. I love how they used both kind of office areas and taking out the window and the lightning. And then when Anakin shows up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you get chills again. Because it's like, what's going to happen? We figure he's going to side with Palpatine. See, I like that he needs him to save Padme. That I like. But I wanted there to be, I guess, just the relationship between Anakin and the Council to be really positive. That way, when this happens, I have Anakin like, I don't want to kill you, but, leave him alone. And Palpatine with his face being disfigured and that from the lightning. I like that. And again, Hayden's acting when he's pleading himself to Palpatine. Like, I need your help. Help me save Padme. The acting was just so wooden at some points. Just the dialogue delivery. I pledge myself to your teachings. And just the delivery didn't work. And, but ultimately the movie is very entertaining. There's a lot of action in it, which I like. The saber duel, it's very fast, but it needed to be, less wide shots. And again, just back to Darth Maul, that duel. If it had even matched that. There's some good parts of it, but ultimately you're just waiting for the end because it's a very long saber duel. But there's just not enough, tense moments in that. Because you watch and, hey, maybe Obi-Wan has a fake limb because of Anakin. We didn't know what was going to happen. Is he going to get burned? And, it goes back to the Phantom Menace when Qui-Gon tells Shmi about Anakin, he sees things before they happen. Clearly not. He wouldn't have done that leap over Obi-Wan, who just chopped him up into bits. So they could have found a clever way around that. Maybe we go inside Anakin's mind and he sees, well, if I jump from here, leap over, he's going to chop me up. So maybe he'll try and use the Force or something and throw off Obi, but ultimately Obi still gets the upper hand. Because having the higher ground, it's that doesn't mean you win. And I liked everything with Grievous, coughing droid, that still cracks me up. But I like that he served a purpose in this. And Dooku, that lightsaber duel with Dooku, I almost forgot about that. That was very well choreographed. Probably the second best in the trilogy. Between him, Obi, and Anakin. And it had been a few years. That's another issue with these movies. The gaps between the movie timelines. I mean, Phantom to Attack is about 10 years or so? And then between Attack and Sith, it's about 3 years. So that's all stuff we need to see, what's going on with Anakin. But, yeah, the pacing is great in the movie, very entertaining. You can watch it the whole way through. And because the action beats keep it going, keep it moving. And Obi-Wan, his saber battle with Grievous, that was pretty good. I like how Grievous had, multiple sabers in that at the same time. But again, we have Obi and Annie separated. And it's why for 2 movies? They just met in the first one. Now we're separating them again and again. And even Ewan's delivery in this, some of it's kind of wooden. It's he's talking to a tennis ball, his eyeballs don't move. It's almost like George said, when you say your lines, don't move your head at all. And it just doesn't really work. Again, I don't know if they did a lot of takes or not, but, send me to kill the Emperor. I cannot kill Anakin. He's like a brother to me. And it's why aren't you moving your head at all? There's no real, emotion. If there had been more of a falling out between Obi and Anakin, I think that would have worked better. And you keep the other stuff in, Anakin needing Palpatine to save Padme. I really like that. But with the Council, it's you just kill all of them off, and it's who cares? Just because we didn't know them. So these movies could have been longer. That would have been fine. Maybe half an hour or even an hour. But I do like the balance, just like the Force, in all these movies. And again, they don't branch off or anything, try to do too much. And of course, we see the suit scene at the end. I had no problem when he breaks out in the no. I wasn't laughing at all. I thought that was very like Shakespearean and his Frankenstein moments. And of course, Yoda, his saber battle with Palpatine at the end. I like when they're on those pods, whatever you call them, in the Senate room. I really like that stuff. But eventually the fight, it's just when they're like throwing stuff. And then Yoda, he gives up way too easily. Because I kind of wish he'd been knocked unconscious or something. Then he wakes up and Palpatine's gone. And the guards are on their way to retrieve Yoda. And then he slips away. But just his escape from there, how he planned that with Bail, it's just too convenient. And it's kind of like, really? Go back there. You're still moving around just fine. And then Palpatine, when Yoda first arrives in his room, I mean, it looked like a prince room. So overall, definitely the best of the trilogy. And not the best of everything, but overall it's rewatchable and all the way through. But it just didn't deliver on everything. And one thing I like and don't like is that each movie you've moved on from stuff, but at the same time they should address certain things more, just to make it more compelling and build up tension and whatnot. My dad always thought that Heath Ledger would have made a great Anakin. You look at his work in The Patriot with Mel Gibson, and of course, you know, after the trilogy, The Dark Knight, I mean, just a brilliant performance. But yeah, so this movie is rewatchable pretty much all the way through, and great action, okay performances, but it's really about the finale, the third act. But that's going to do it for my review of Revenge of the Sith. So stay tuned, because later I'll be reviewing, of course, the original trilogy and also the sequel trilogy.
Anakin, drop down. You're about to be taken.
In the first game, Star Wars game I played on the computer, on a PC, was Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast. This is back in like 02, 03. And I remember my roommates would laugh because the character, I don't know if it was Luke or whomever, would keep falling off of this platform. And that yell. And of course with video games, I mean, you have the original Battlefront 1 and 2, which were a lot of fun. Had those on the Xbox. Republic Commando, I really liked that one. I think that came out in like 2004, right before Sith. That one was a lot of fun. And 2005, maybe, discovered the Jedi Knight 3, Jedi Academy. And that's where I discovered the Maker mod, in which you use map objects to create your own levels, your own designs, basically. So you type in a code, and you'd say, like, whatever kind of platform, and it would show up. And that was groundbreaking for me at the time, because I didn't even think, like, oh yeah, I'd love to design maps. Now I use, like, City Skylines and Planet Coaster and Far Cry. But back then, you know, it was so much fun. We'd spend hours building stuff, meeting a lot of people. And right before that was Luger mod, which I just missed out on. And I remember, like, the summer of 2006, like, it was kind of a terrible time because jobs weren't working out. But I always look forward to Maker mod, and, you know, some people just come into the server and just watch you build stuff. And I have some videos on my YouTube of some of the designs and other players' designs too. But geez, I haven't played that in well over a decade, I think. And that was fun while it lasted. And I remember the movie battles. That was a mod for the game. It started out on the regular servers and that. And that was so much fun. because they made like complete maps, like the on Naboo in the hangar, and then of course that big room with all the, I don't know what you call them, but well, basically all the scenes from the lightsaber fight in the Phantom Menace, and so that was cool. And on computer at the time, the only problem was lag, because we're talking like 2005, 2006, 2007, so not really high speed exactly. And at one point I couldn't even play movie battles because my computer, I had an old compact Presario 2005 model, and it just couldn't handle all the graphics in that. But those were good times, fun times. And it's odd because that Obi-Wan game for the original Xbox came out probably 2004. That one, they never re-released it on any platform. And it was a fun game. You just went around with your saber, just chopping stuff up using the Force. I don't know if there were licensing issues with that game or what was going on. And I remember the Revenge of the Sith video game. They had some scenes from the movie in between levels, which is really cool. Some of those didn't even end up in the movie, which is odd. And that game was a lot of fun. I actually bought that one recently also. Whole bunch of them were like, $5 in that each. But it still holds up. A lot of fun. You go around with your saber again and just chopping stuff up. But I haven't played like the Squadrons game. That one got pretty terrible reviews. Force Unleashed, I played that a couple times. Not all the way through. I just mean like I played maybe a few levels, and that one was a lot of fun. I remember back in the day when the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic came out, I bought it and I'm like, I'm pretty good at these saber battles. And then I realized, I'm not even playing. I didn't know about RPGs in that. I ended up returning the game, but I was so confused because I was like, advance, and it just starts fighting, and I'm like, I'm doing okay. I don't know how I'm doing all these moves, but but I didn't like that. I mean, at the time, it was a great-looking game, I'm sure, but one of those are like, okay, RPG.
Now you listen here, Twisted Sister. I ain't in this for your personal revolution.
And who can forget Jane Silent Bob Strike Back? Because you remember how Star Wars was included in that. And, I think earlier I called it Lucas Ranch. Skywalker Ranch. What was I thinking? Because I remember that Kevin Smith was able to, do the sound edit there. And it was great to see Carrie Fisher. She played a nun. And, of course, Mark Hamill is his Cockknocker. Bong Sabers. That movie was just so much fun. And I don't know how they talked them into doing it. They didn't get Harrison, but still people were like, hey, this is something. And that came out, in between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. But very funny stuff, very clever. So for the longest time, the space battle in Return of the Jedi was my favorite. And just so many great moments in that. I love that supercut on YouTube. But then Rogue One came along and holy moly. I'll be reviewing that movie later, but the space battle in that, I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite from those two because they're both very rewatchable. But Rogue One definitely took it to a whole nother level. Sadly, the sequel trilogy wasn't able to top that at all, not even close. I'm not sure why. You don't want to go bigger and better. But yeah, the Return of the Jedi space battle, it's one of my favorites. I'll watch it like every few months or something. And Disney, of course, purchased Lucasfilm a little over a decade ago. And it is nice to have all of the movies, shows, documentaries on Disney Plus. That is a bonus. Because I remember before streaming, sometimes you'd see movies on TNT or something, but it's like I want them without commercials. And I remember like around Christmas time every year, they'd re-release the limited edition DVDs. And I picked those up a couple times, I think. But they were pretty pricey. You're talking like, $20 a movie. Whereas now you can get a month of streaming for even less than that. But, yeah, you read reviews. It's all pretty mixed about the sequel trilogy, what Disney's done. But still, I mean, back then when they were purchased, nobody knew what's going to happen. Because it took years after that for Disney Plus to get going. And then a lot of the series. Well, I think it was October 2004. The special edition of, I was going to say VHS, DVD release of Star Wars, the original trilogy. And I remember going to Target that morning thinking there's going to be a line, but nope. I was maybe the first person there. And that was really exciting. But again, I mean, a lot of people over the years, over the decades, have wanted the unaltered original cuts of the movies. And for some reason, they're holding on to them. Because I think the ones on Disney Plus right now, those are like special editions. And it's funny because you think, well, I prefer for the movies to look better. But at the same time, you want to show people like the uncut Blue Magic, Star Wars trilogy. But I don't think I've owned them on Blu-ray at all. Any of the Star Wars movies. But definitely digital releases.
Gonna be a pilot. Best in the galaxy.
Okay, let's dive deep into The Force Awakens. 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. Sequel trilogy. Oh boy, what an exciting time. The trailers, the spots, they didn't spoil anything. In fact, one of the greatest misdirects in movie history that doesn't get talked about much. Because in the trailers, we see Finn activating the lightsaber, and we're like, oh, he's going to be a Jedi. He can use the Force. He was a stormtrooper, we know that, but that's pretty much it. But really, it's about Rey. Because in the trailer, it's like, who are you? I'm no one. She wants to get back to Jakku. Her family's coming home. And, what ends up happening, it's like, whoa. Because even she's surprised. She uses the Force to call the saber over. And then fights Kylo. And, it's like, who's this figure behind the mask? What's going on? What's his relationship to Darth Vader? Is he just a fan, a follower? Is he of relation? And growing up, I didn't read many of the expanded universe novels. I read a few, but there were just so many of them. I'm sure one day I'll get through all of them. But so I didn't even think like, oh, that's Han and Leia's kid. And in one of the spots, I believe, we saw him fighting with Finn, and from behind we saw his, big, hairstyle and that. And I was like, who is that character? But lightsaber battle with Finn, it's very short, but it's very thrilling, very compelling, and maybe the best in the trilogy, sadly, as far as one-on-one. Because the duel with Rey, it goes on a little too long and just too many wide shots. It's hard to get emotional about it. And one thing that really upset me, this leads into The Last Jedi, because Rian Johnson, the director, he addressed the movement of one of Kylo Ren's scars. When he lost the fight, she slashed him, like up his face and that. because he said it looks ridiculous because it went over like the bridge of his nose, I believe, and then he moved it over one of the eyebrows. And I thought, how do you get away with that? And then Abrams, I believe, kept that in The Rise of Skywalker, but his scars would kind of come and go in that movie. So I was really baffled by that. I understand Ryan got creative freedom pretty much, but to move something like that, create such a continuity error, I didn't understand that. Now, I would have moved Kylo Ren's relationship to Han and Leia towards the end when him and Han meet on the catwalk. He takes off the helmet for the first time, drops it, and then we learn that they're actually father and son. And I just didn't like the placement of it in the movie. But it's still, very sad, very dramatic in that. And the trailers kept us guessing. Rey, her relationship with Finn, with Han. We weren't sure, how do they all meet and stuff. But it's it's that classic Abrams style of filmmaking. Like he did with Mission Impossible 3. He's very good at, moving stuff, literally. Moving the camera. Keeping everything going. But again, with the new Death Star, Starkiller base, it's massive. Yet they're like, oh, just take this out and that. And how did Finn know about all that stuff anyways? He said he worked sanitation, but still. He just walks by certain areas and oh, that's how you do that. But it's good that he knew all that stuff. But The Last Jedi, which we'll talk about next, it needed that Abrams style. And moving stuff and, the pacing's great. But of course at the end, the big teaser, Luke Skywalker. And unfortunately, which we'll talk about more, each of these movies in the sequel trilogy, they're pieces of a puzzle, but they don't go to the same puzzle. However, unlike the prequel movies, The Force Awakens is very rewatchable. Probably watch it once a year. And it's just, again, Abrams, his directing style. And some of the action was a little lacking, but that shot of the X-Wings over the water when they were on that planet, that's one of the most beautiful shots of a Star Wars movie ever. And I remember seeing that in the trailer, and it's like, oh my gosh. And then when he's flying around taking out all those TIE fighters, it's just so far away. Again, too many wide shots in some of the action. Close up, you want to feel the impact. But I like the relationship between Poe and Finn. And I wish they hadn't really split them up in the sequel. So in The Rise of Skywalker, it was nice to see them reunited, because they have really good chemistry. And Finn, who knows what JJ originally had planned for him, if anything, but he was probably best in this movie. And just a great story. Yes, it's a rehash of A New Hope. I mean, BB-8 instead of R2. BB-8 really caught on, good for toys and stuff, and it's one of those, you don't mind it. It's not a Jar Jar, where you're kind of what is this? Why is this thing, a main character, and what's going on? When it doesn't work, it's just frustrating. But this one, maybe the best out of the sequel trilogy. I really like what JJ did with The Rise of Skywalker. But this one, as far as the action goes, no, I'm going to give it to The Force Awakens. The best out of the three. The most promising, but then the sequels, it was kind of what are we doing? But what a great time. I still remember I was leaving work, going to go see the movie with my dad. We were what's going to happen? Who is everyone? How does, Han and Chewie? How do they get involved with everything? And a great job with them, too. And, of course, great to see Leia, the old princess. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you're listening on Anchor, you can leave a voice message. Otherwise, check out my socials, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. What you think of this movie. Pros, cons, how it ranks out of the 3. But now let's get into The Last Jedi. How you doing, you old pirate? So good to see ya. Hey, Chewbacca, you still hanging around this loser? Okay, now on to perhaps the most controversial of the Star Wars movies, The Last Jedi, directed by Rian Johnson. Boy, oh boy, the trailer is very misleading because they don't show you how quote-unquote funny it is. All the humor sprinkled throughout it. You know, Ryan, I guess he saw The Force Awakens and he was like, you know, Hux could be silly. We could make him Goofy, a cartoon character. Right from the get-go. Oh, and Poe? I just don't like him. Let's try and make him an enemy. Basically, by just wanting to know what's going on, we'll be like, haha, see, he's a jerk. Knights of Ren? Nah. Not even a scene with them. Interesting choices. This is my argument when you have different directors within the same film franchise, like you have a trilogy. Like, look what the Russo brothers did with The Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. Those films, they have a lot going on in each, but they're easy to follow. And it's not like Bucky's all of a sudden a comic. You know, he didn't have the best lines later on, kind of like the Falcon. But the point is, you know, each story connects to the previous one. And with The Last Jedi, there's a lot that didn't work. Originally, I give the movie 3 out of 10. And I was talking to my friend Marie, may she rest in peace, because we talked a lot about these movies. And she said, well, look at it from an entertainment standpoint, The Last Jedi. Because I was frustrated because it's such a great looking film. Great music scores throughout. But it just doesn't fit with The Force Awakens. You have grumpy old Luke who's throwing out one-liners. The back and forth between him and Rey. It's like, what's with all the comedy? But eventually I was like, okay, I give it a 7 out of 10 because it is a great film, but it's just very different from what we expected to happen after the events of The Force Awakens. And right from the get-go, there were warning signs. You're like, oh, maybe people are right about this. Because critics now were saying, I mean, critics' scores on Rotten Tomatoes were, and I believe still are, higher than the audience score. But some people were saying, like, it's not great, it's not good. So it opens, and of course we see Rey walking up to Luke, and we're like, what is going to happen? Is he going to be like, how did you find me? Who are you? Is she going to say anything? And when he first chucked the saber, I actually didn't laugh. Because I remember telling my friend Marie, I said, I think Luke is so disconnected that he's even, lost touch with the Force. She was like, no way. I wish we could have recorded all of our conversations and that about this before and after the movie came out. But that had worried me a little bit when he threw the saber. But I'd heard the opening space battle would rival that of Rogue One. I was like, really? Because that's a hard one to top. And boy, were they so wrong. Couldn't be more wrong. Holy cannoli. First of all, those TIE bomber ships, make them a little bit bigger next time, huh? Make them so heavy they can't even move around. And Poe flying around at first, I was like, some good maneuvers and such. But I thought it was going to be a full-on space battle. And then we cut to Hux. They got him doing the eyebrow acting, the kind of goofy expressions. And I'm like, oh no, not Hux. You know, the one from The Force Awakens. The last day of the Republic. And now he's, can he hear me? I'm like, no, give that to somebody else. No, not Hux. Come on. Made him into a freaking cartoon character. So yeah, that opening battle, I mean, that's the thing. It's frustrating because the visuals are great. And those slow moments let the shots breathe. But nowhere near Rogue One. Not in the same galaxy. Barely in the same universe. So, not even close. Whoever wrote that, maybe they just watched a 5-second shot of Rogue One, the space battle, and were like, I think it's better than that. But yeah, and then in the throne room, then getting rid of Snoke. I didn't mind that because I didn't really care much about that character's origins. Or at least, I figure someday they'll have a movie about Snoke, his relationship to Palpatine. We could see them together. That would be cool. And, of course, the falling out between Luke and Kylo, which wasn't well done in this movie. They revisited a couple times. And it's like, no, wait. But he left with a handful of your students. Did he seduce them? Did Snoke? What happened? And you want there to be more of a falling out, just like Obi and Annie in the prequels. But the fight in the throne room with the guards, beautifully shot, looks great. And Ryan's good about not doing, the wide shots from too far away. He gets right in there. You can feel every cut, every burn, every slice. And it's funny because people pointed out when you watch it, if you slow it down and you look at every character, some of the guards are just spinning randomly or falling without being hit. But it's just like the movie, it looks great, but then you dig deeper and you're like, what is this? And Rey's origins, that whole scene in the cave was kind of a letdown, I felt. But I thought when she's doing the snapping and seeing herself in a row, I was like, this means she's a clone. And maybe her parents, maybe not her biological parents who left her on Jakku. I keep wanting to say Tatooine. Looks pretty close, right? But with that, and then, with Ryan's story about the Force, anybody can, have access to it. Not just Jedi. I actually like that. But I think it would have worked better in The Force Awakens. Because maybe it awakens for more than just Rey. Because in Finn, I feel like that's what JJ was going for in The Rise of Skywalker. It's like, Rey, I never told you this. And it's like, what? And he never tells her. What the heck? Come on, JJ. The last movie, and you're going to hold on to this nugget? But anyways, I liked that. But it also kind of took away from Rey and her being, special. The story being about her. Because if anybody can have access, then wouldn't the story focus on a bunch more characters? Wouldn't she open up her own school? Eventually, at the end of Skywalker, the Rise of Skywalker, something like that, just to help people. Because she didn't know what was going on with her. She needed a teacher. But I like her relationship, her time with Luke. I like that she left him to try and save Kylo. That definitely mirrors The Empire Strikes Back. When Luke, he went to fight Vader. And, Adam Driver as Kylo, couldn't have picked a better guy to play him. I almost wish he'd played Anakin, because he has that kind of Shakespearean theater background, I believe, and a very strong performance. Not, I pledge myself to your teachings. With him, it'd be like, I'll give you everything, but you must save Padme. Just the voice, the delivery, he's so believable. No wooden acting, no eyebrow acting. And that scar thing, though, that still bothers. It bugs me so much. And it's hard not to notice it, too. It's like, oh, your scar moved. The Force could have come up with something. And we got to talk about Rose. I never had an issue with her character at all, but it's just you take her and even Benicio del Toro, his character, out of the movie, doesn't change anything, because their mission doesn't go as planned anyways. And separating Rey, Poe, and Finn, it just doesn't work. Again, just like Attack of the Clones and even Revenge of the Sith. Anakin and Obi-Wan are separated, and it's like, why? We need to build up more tension. Build a relationship, something believable. But for some reason, it's like, nope, you have this side mission on a casino planet. Finn, you're back, got sliced up, but apparently you're fine. You're lying on your back. And then he gets out, has this kind of comedy moment, and where's Rey? I'd be like, dude, go heal. You're back. Oh. So when Kylo sliced him in the end of The Force Awakens, I was like, ooh, that'd be brutal. And it's like, I guess he's just fine to move around in that, but... And the finale of the movie, you were hoping it'd be a cliffhanger ending, kind of like Empire. Like, all right, we're gonna gather all of our troops and, you know, save this person or whatever, or get ready for war. And it's just, it's so low key, it's so cool, quiet, and you're kind of like, well, what now? And the Battle of Crates, it is one of those movie moments, usually when they say, like, nobody's coming to help, we don't have any reinforcements, usually somebody will show up, but not on Crate. I actually like that. And those ships, though, I mean, those, you know, rinky-dinky ships, it's like, I don't even think they had weapons on them. I wanted a lot more action, and maybe have, you know, an X-Wing or something on standby, something, or just a couple reinforcements, like, oh, we heard your call and only 3 ships, but I did like when Rey and Chewie showed up in the Millennium Falcon. I love that shot when they take out 3 TIE fighters at once and leading them off, you know, of the rest of the Resistance. That I really liked. But just lacking a bit in action. And I like, you know, that Finn was ready to sacrifice himself. But the Rose, all that controversy, I'm like, well, I didn't hate the character. I didn't mind her at all. But it's just like, did the story really need her? And even before the movie came out, it was announced that Rian Johnson would get his own trilogy. Which I knew right then, I'm like, don't announce it. Just like The Amazing Spider-Man, when they announced like 3 sequels before the second one came out. And it's like, let's see how this plays out. Let's not greenlight a bunch of stuff. It's exciting in that, but yeah, I'd still like to see his trilogy. I don't know if Patty Jenkins is still doing the Rogue Squadron movie because of the failure of Wonder Woman 1984, which is kind of a bizarre movie. But anyways, The Last Jedi, it's just a great looking film. Sadly, the saber battle, you know, between Luke and Kylo. Like, a lot of build up, and you're like, this might be where they win us back in this movie. Here we go. And they exchange a few, blade swipes in that, but I had no problem with how Luke did that, how he projected himself there. I really liked that. I didn't see that coming at all. I figured he went, got his hair cut, maybe died a little bit, and then showed up. And the scene with Leia, when he's coming in through the cave and that's just such a beautiful shot. And you're like, oh, Return of the Jedi. And when Kylo goes to stab him in that, and the saber just goes through, and how Luke died, I really like that. It's sad, it's tragic, it's not uplifting. He's on the island, and he dies by himself, but I really liked that. I thought it was very sad, very well done. But yeah, so the movie, it wasn't like fan service, which can be a good thing, but when you kind of turn everything over and then you move it out of the way, put your stuff, your ideas in, it just kind of gets confusing. Because in that movie, even Kylo says your parents were filthy junk traders. They were nobody. And then what happens in The Rise of Skywalker, which we'll talk about, it's kind of like, this isn't really matching up. Now it's like, who cares who her parents were? It's her story. But yeah, very different movies. The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. I'm still curious if JJ, if he was in talks to direct all three, what ideas he had for The Last Jedi. Great title, but yeah, it's a very frustrating film. And I'm glad, like George Lucas, when he directed the prequels, that was all him. He directed all three. And even though obviously not the greatest Star Wars movies, at least you kept the tone of the characters not the same. You didn't change a lot. Not like Obi-Wan is, all of a sudden a comedian. Or Dooku. That would have been terrible. But yeah, let me know what you think. And next we're going to talk about The Rise of Skywalker. So stay tuned.
Cassian Andor, how did you steal that? You just walk in like you belong.
At last. The Rise of Skywalker. Good title, not very fitting. Because, all of our heroes from the original trilogy die off. Except for Chewbacca, of course. But, they tried to do it, it was kind of a misdirect. And it's like, so there was another ship. And that just didn't really do anything. But anyways, J.J. Abrams came back to direct, and there wasn't much they could do as far as retconning what Ryan did with The Last Jedi. And they tried it with the whole parents thing, brought back Palpatine, which they said was always in the works, but I would have set that up in The Last Jedi. At the end, Kylo makes his way to Exegol, and we're not even sure how. He lands, and he approaches Palpatine, and he says, who is she? Lightning, thunder, roll credits. That way we're like, no way. And of course, the clones of Snoke, we saw those, but it was kind of like, were those like bad versions? What's going on? Are there more Snokes out there? You created Snoke, and Snoke seduced Kylo, but there's just so much we don't know. And somehow Palpatine survived. I'm like, that's it? Come on. Because at first I thought, well, Palpatine would have used the cloning technology on himself. That's how he's back, and there are many of him. So the way I would have written it is like, we think it's just going to be this trilogy, but really it's going to set up another trilogy. But they were so focused on wrapping everything up, and it just doesn't work. I liked seeing JJ's version of Luke, because he was very serious, and I liked that Rey used his X-Wing, because I thought that was wasted in The Last Jedi. I'm like, oh, we see his X-Wing fighter. And the saber duel between Rey and Kylo on the ship, on that planet, it just, too many wide shots and no real impact in that. I did like the end, though, when she stabs him and leaves him, and their little conversation. And I admit, I got chills, and takes your breath away when we see Kylo talking to Han, whether that's a memory that's all in his mind, or it's an actual, Force ghost or whatever. That was well done. Han, the dialogue, not the best. It's kind of that, you can do it, and believe in all that and all that stuff, but it was great to see him. And Kylo, his turn to the light side, it's convincing, because Adam Driver, like I said in my review of The Last Jedi, brilliant actor, just perfect for the role. You almost wanted him to feel betrayed by the dark side. So he's like, listen, Rey, we're not teaming up forever, but we're going to stop Palpatine. And when they get to Palpatine at the end, the action was okay, but the best scene probably out of the whole trilogy. So Kylo and Rey, they're side by side, raise up the sabers. I'm like, this is gonna be epic. No saber duel with Palpatine. I was like, come on. And the lightning that kills him, and it was just too easy. Kind of like Starkiller Base. It's like, look, sir, a pin. Like, oh, that was easy. Let's go home. But a lot of letdowns, and at the end, I thought this is going to be the best space battle in movie history. It's going to top the Endor space battle, Rogue One's space battle. And when all those ships show up, first of all, you imagine if they're like, all wings report in. It's like, we're all here. Let's go to it. Like, how do you divide and conquer? Like, who's leading this operation? Okay, the 100 plus on my left, north, you go that way. Like, they'd be running into each other, it seems like. And not one of them showing up at the Battle of Crate. I'd be like, Lando, I know we're, mid-battle and that, but could you ask them where they were? They're all willing to come out here. And just so many ships. That shot, and it's like, who are all those pilots? Where do they come from? They just show up, and I'm like, Kashyyyk, Naboo, I don't know where you guys are from. It's great for all of you to show up, but at the same time, there were a few cool shots of them taking down some of the Star Destroyers, but ultimately, it was just a letdown. I really like what JJ did with The Force Awakens as far as the action, but it seems like some of the sequences are really short, and this was a major opportunity. All those destroyers, remember seeing those in the trailer, and you're like, this is going to be epic, because how many TIE fighters, and the logistics of everything. Somebody broke it down in a video about all those ships being stored on Exegol, and all the manpower, like the Death Star, how many trips to Home Depot and all that stuff. But that aside, it was an amazing opportunity. I feel this movie should have been 3 hours. So a lot of action, but it's a great looking movie. JJ, I mean, you look at Mission Impossible 3, great action in that, but some of the shaky cam kind of ruins the shots in that. And even with his first Star Trek movie, but Into Darkness, all the shots work so much better. It seemed like he veered away from the shaky cam. Well, I did like how they incorporated Carrie Fisher's Leia into the story. Looks like unused footage, and she looks different than she did in The Last Jedi. I think that's because they used some footage from The Force Awakens. But not a big role, because people said The Force Awakens, that's about Han. Not only Han, but as far as the original trilogy people. And The Last Jedi, Luke, and then Rise of Skywalker, Leia. And they did a good job. The way her character died, and then her son Kylo passing away, that was a shocker. Because it's like Rey and Kylo kiss. And I know that was fan service because of The Last Jedi. People were like, Reylo, here we go. And it is sweet because they share a lot of the same insecurities, worries, just things they're dealing with. And it would have been interesting to see where those characters would have gone off to if he had survived. But again, that scene, there's no time to really breathe. Like, Rey should be heartbroken. I mean, she was about to give herself to the Sith. Her grandpa is Palpatine, who somehow survived. Her parents aren't coming back. And Kylo just died. I mean, she should be a mess. And Jedi, Sith, is it all over? The yellow saber. There just wasn't enough closure in this movie. And even the Rise of Skywalker, at the end, I mean, maybe the most controversial thing besides the Last Jedi movie is, I'm Rey Skywalker. People are like, what? Now, if she had lived with the, Leia and Luke, obviously separately, for years, I could understand that's her family. I totally get that. But never be ashamed of who you are. So wouldn't she say, I'm Rey Palpatine. And it didn't work. I really loved all the Palpatine stuff. Because Ian, of course, is fantastic, and all that voice. But gosh, I wish JJ had his own trilogy, and he directed The Last Jedi, and Ryan has his own. And it's just a hit and a miss. But all three are great movies. But it's not a trilogy by any means. Because each is so different. But, seeing Kylo die is very dramatic. But it works for the story. And it's nice he can be reunited with Han and Leia, depending on what you believe. But at the end, it's kind of like, we won, I guess. And Finn, he can use the Force. What's going on? Is that what he was going to tell Rey? And it just wraps up, and you're kind of like, okay, so no more Jedi, no more Sith. The Sith, always two there are. And Palpatine, Snoke is gone. We had Kylo, but then he turned. The Knights of Ren, kind of wasted in this, because we're like, who are these guys? They fight with Kylo, and there's no real emotion, no build-up or anything. And I did like the saber transfer from Rey to Kylo. That was pretty awesome. Even Palpatine was like, that's a very good magic trick. How did you do it? He didn't say that, but there's a lot of good stuff in this movie. I like that Poe, Finn, and Rey are reunited, and they're going on this hunt. And it's fun, exciting, but it's just so detached from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. In these movies, you want one thing pretty much to follow, and it's like, so the parents thing is gone. Palpatine's back. Snoke, he's no longer with us. And it's like, who are we rooting for? And what's the ultimate end goal? But point is, this trilogy, there were a lot of opportunities to do some things, and it's just so frustrating. Because like I said, all the movies are good on their own, but they could have done a better job keeping them connected. But as far as visuals, this is probably the best looking. I liked a lot of the shots, even more than The Last Jedi, which is hard to top. Because it's like every shot is almost like a piece in a museum. Not a painting per se, but just the way Ryan shot everything. Very beautiful. But action in that goes to The Force Awakens. And visuals... Gosh, you know what? No, it's going to be a tie between Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. And story, I'm going to give to Force Awakens, because that one, I'm trying to separate, like, all the excitement from that time. 2014, 15, we're pumped, we're excited. Movie didn't let down at all. It was a great setup, a great starter, and unfortunately, just didn't follow through on some things. But, yeah, I'm curious if JJ, if he's going to be involved with Star Wars anymore. Maybe a series or something, or maybe Rogue Squadron, if Patty isn't doing that anymore. I don't know. But anyways, I think that's going to do it for my review. That's all I can think of, really. They fly now. They fly now? They fly now. It's like, wow. JJ, have you seen the other Star Wars movies? This was another controversial thing. It's just one of those things where you're like, nobody caught this in the edits? Test screenings? Anything? The studio was like, how about they fly? Oh no, we didn't know that. But I'm sure they've been flying for a while. But, yeah, so that's it for my review. That should do it. And stay tuned. Reviews of Rogue One and Solo coming up. And then, of course, the original trilogy. And if you're listening on Anchor, you can leave a voice message. Otherwise, links to my socials. Leave a comment. And, all right, on to more good stuff.
Jin, did they send you here to kill me?
Well, I liked that every year we were getting a Star Wars movie for a little while. Because 2015, Force Awakens, next year, Rogue One, Last Jedi, Solo, Rise of Skywalker. Now it's been 4 years. I'm going to be reviewing Rogue One and Solo, but I imagine that Rogue Squadron was going to be the next one. But I thought they were in the groove and, just going to have one a year, which is a lot of work. But when you have different directors, you can work on different ones at the same time. That's interesting. And all great movies. But it's just the trilogy just didn't work and kind of offset everything. And then Solo with the marketing issues. But what a shame. Because I'll tell you right now, I love Rogue One and Solo. Those even over the sequel trilogy. But who knows what's going to be the next move. Rogue Squadron, new trilogy. Who knows? It's pretty messy, but we'll see. All right, on to what I consider a masterpiece. Not just in the Star Wars universe, but filmmaking, is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. All about our team of heroes stealing the plans for the Death Star. There's a lot of characters, but Gareth did such a great job balancing everything. I mean, there's a lot of characters in this movie, and you really feel for them. Jin, her father, their relationship. But it's all about the mission. And I saw it in theaters with my friend Marie. Again, rest in peace. Just the best friend a person could have. I miss her so much. I miss talking to her about Star Wars. I don't think she ever got to finish Solo. She told me she fell asleep during it. But, yeah, seeing Rogue One in theaters, I mean, I was blown away by it. The story is so compelling. And, of course, the action-packed finale. My gosh. Maybe the best space battle ever. And, what was his name? Director Krennic. I really liked that character. And I'll talk about Andor, the series, later. But I was confused. Why not a series focused on Krennic, his rise to power, his involvement with the Death Star? But nothing against Andor, but it's like out of that movie, for them to pick him and name the series after him, it was an interesting move. But I'll talk about that show later. Anyways, the music, the score, I absolutely love. And because I remember when they showed a photo, a still from the movie, and it was very underwhelming, like a year before it came out. But then the trailers came along, and you start seeing the X-Wing fighters, and I'm like, oh, this is Star Wars. I was worried it was going to be really boring, not a lot of action. And I'm glad I was wrong. And while watching the movie, I remember telling Marie after we left, I said, you almost forgot, all these characters are going to die for the most part. And it's very tragic, very beautiful. And of course, that Vader scene at the end. That is Vader. I still don't see Hayden behind the helmet. I never have. It just never worked. But that brought back Vader. That was so tense. And my gosh. I mean, that just adds to all the action, the Vader boarding the ship, and then our heroes dying. And just a beautiful finale. Maybe the best third act out of any Star Wars movie. But it didn't try to do too much. It kept it all about the story, all about the Death Star, getting the plans for it. And the way it leads right into A New Hope is perfect. And you figure Vader, when he's talking to Leia, she'd be like, oh, that's the wrong ship. He's like, no, I saw your ship leaving. I know it's this one. But, of course, they didn't have deepfake at the time, I don't think, because this was probably made in 2014, 2015. So with the Tarkin character, Grand Moff Tarkin, and then Leia at the end. Leia, that one looked great, because they didn't have to, move her around or anything. Whereas Tarkin, the movements were kind of stiff, didn't match up with the face. But it still looks really good. And I swear they must have made him taller. But those were great. The visuals, amazing. Just a slam dunk. And this gave us even more hope. The Force Awakens, Luke's back. What's going to happen? Rey, her powers, her family, Finn, what's going on with him? Then The Last Jedi. And then, unfortunately, Solo. Again, I love it, so I'll talk about that next. But that one also, the marketing. So you had 2 uplifting and then 2 downers. And kind of ruined the whole thing. Which is unfortunate. But, yeah, Rogue One, just so many great characters. And, of course, we say Bail Organa. And he's actually useful. It's not just a random cameo. But I like that they took some characters out of this for the Andor series, like Saw. And, of course, Cassian Andor.
So, fellow delegates, Bisa gave emergency powers to the Senate. Okay, day?
And in the beginning of the movie, they're naming all the planets and that's all the bases they're going to and whatnot. But you knew later on in the movie that was Mustafar. And I like seeing Vader's castle there because that's where he was born. Darth Vader, essentially. And the conversation with Krennic. And Krennic really stole the show for the most part. I liked his theme. And yeah, I'd still like to see a series based on that character. Just his rise to power. But yeah, this movie definitely brought back Vader. The one from the original trilogy. The one who's really threatening and yeah, just a great use of all the characters, the cameos, everything worked. There's nothing I would take out of the movie. It's very sad, it's very dramatic, but again, all the action is done so well, and yeah, just a perfect Star Wars movie. And it was great to see Donnie Yen, his character, and his brother. And it's one of those, like, there's no lightsaber duel. I mean, Vader has his saber, but it's one of those where it works without having a lightsaber duel, which with Star Wars is risky, but this one definitely pulls it off. So stay tuned. Next, I'll be talking about Solo, a Star Wars story. At last, I've been waiting for my grandchild to come home.
Alas, the Jedi are no more.
Well, I remember seeing Solo in theaters, and Ron Howard did a great job. Took over directing. The original two directors had a falling out with the studio, I guess, creative differences. And that created a lot of bad press, because people were saying that Alden, the character who plays Han, like, does he need acting lessons? I guess they wanted him to improv a lot, which for Star Wars is kind of like, we have plenty of material to work off of. You don't need to, like, make stuff up. And then, of course, that delayed the marketing for the release of the movie. And what a shame, because it came out great. If I didn't know any of that stuff about the, Ron Howard taking over, I'd be like, this is great. Like, what's the problem? So many great characters, perfect casting, a lot of great action. And, of course, that cameo at the end by Darth Maul. What was that going to set in motion? They haven't done anything with it, I don't think. At least with live action. And what a shame. How did Maul survive? Chopped in half, okay. And then fell into the abyss, whatever. And, because they were on Naboo. So, did he fall to the bottom of something? And just like Palpatine, it's like, just tell us, like, how did you survive? But that cameo is very promising, but unfortunately just didn't go anywhere, I don't think. Unless they do a sequel, but we'll see. And, yeah, just so many great characters, great plots. And I like how Han, he's confident, kind of arrogant, but he knows what he's doing. I think that was perfectly cast. And there's a lot going on. Crimson Dawn, Dryden Voss, Infant's Nest. When I first heard that, I was like, what? What are they, bees? What's going on here? And just like Rogue One, a lot of characters, but Howard did a great job balancing everything. And the music score, I love it. The main theme. The beginning of the movie, though, that I wouldn't even call it a chase, really. He just steals their speeder and then goes like, a mile, and then he's home. I was like, that's your big opening? But the music, that's so good. So that I would have extended, and maybe like a 5-minute chase or something. Nothing too extreme, but that was very underwhelming. But otherwise, the train heist sequence is brilliant. And everything with the Falcon, when we see that, again, the music score, just perfect. and Woody as Tobias Beckett. We got Dryden Voss, Lando, perfectly cast. All three was great. I wish, Jar Jar had been that to the franchise, that good. And the fight at the end between Kira and Dryden, a little underwhelming, and of course with Han. But I like how Han outsmarted everyone. And it just, not too many twists and turns where it gets confusing. They don't try and do too much, just like in Rogue One. Because in this, they kind of mention Jabba the Hutt. But there are just so many great moments in this movie. And it's beautiful. And the score, it's kind of that, old-timey kind of feel at times. You think of 40s, 50s, maybe 60s Disneyland kind of feel, if that makes sense. But I really enjoyed it, and it's a shame it didn't take off, because I hope it does someday. Maybe if more people watch it on Disney Plus or wherever. But just a great film. And just sets up everything just right. Mentions of the rebellion. But it's so good. Like I said, it doesn't set up a lot. So if there is no sequel, it's kind of disappointing. But at the same time, it's like, this movie is so good. But let me know what you think. Leave a voice message on Anchor or leave some comments. I'll have links to all my socials. And let me know what you think of the movie. I'd love to hear from you. I think it's great how they, in the new sequel trilogy, how they just undid the whole prophecy thing. Because, that wasn't important at all. Palpatine, he survived somehow. And, I think it's great. Really thrilled with it. And it's too bad. A while back I read that Daisy Ridley apparently couldn't get any roles after the Star Wars trilogy. I don't know if that's still the case, and then John Boyega, it's just the way they talk about it publicly. It's kind of like, why would you want to hire them if they're going to bash the movies or complain about stuff? Because those movies, the success and failure of them, it's not on them really. They weren't the problem. So I hope to see them in future Star Wars movies, but don't talk yourself out of it. I wouldn't do that. But because they're both very talented, and it's unfortunate that the trilogy went the way that it did. Now, that being said, remember Mark Hamill, he seemed to trash The Last Jedi before it came out. He tried to warn us about it. It's like, well, you signed on. Maybe he didn't read all the scripts or see all of them, but, as an actor, it's not up to you, the creative decisions in that. You don't have creative control. Maybe if he were an executive producer, he could have had some input. But just in the interviews, the ones that I saw, he just seemed so miserable. But what do you think? Was he right? Did you hate The Last Jedi? Do you like the movie, but it's like it just doesn't fit with the others? Let me know.
Now, Master Windu, you fought gallantly, worthy of recognition in the archives of the Jedi Order. But now it's finished. Surrender, and your lives will be spared.
No, Dookie! We will not be hostages to be bodied. You fool! Okay, let's talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi, the limited series, 6 episodes. Again, everyone's really hyped for it, and there were some creative decisions that just didn't work, specifically the shaky cam. I don't understand. Maybe the directors of the episodes are like, these saber battles are boring. The action's boring. Let's move the camera instead. That's why you need a good score. That helps carry the action. But lightsaber duels, you don't need to move the cameras around like that, the shaky cam. I don't understand that decision. And really bad camera moves too. shaky cam. If you watch Furious 7, directed by James Wan, specifically the fight between Deckard and Dom at the end, he uses some shaky cam. It actually enhances the fight, because with those guys, it's like you figure you don't need any shaky cam. It's like the action alone is so good. But the way he does it, he keeps everything in frame so you can tell what's going on. Whereas in something like Taken, it's hard to follow. It's just edited so quickly. And the character of Reva, at first, I really liked her. Very compelling. What does she want with Obi-Wan? Why does she... It seemed personal. I would have saved the reveal of what happened to her as a child until the end. Then we flash back to the Jedi Temple and see her getting stabbed by Anakin. Because I like that, but in the beginning, it's like we know that's her. But throughout her, character story, it's just she kind of falls apart, like, too soon. And it's kind of like this started off with an idea like, she hates Obi-Wan. We need to know why. This is personal. Because Vader, I like that, Vader's sending people out to find Obi-Wan. But her story, I like how it ends, but it's just too soon. Like, why the limited series? This is Obi-Wan. He's going to be on Tatooine for decades. Leia was adorable, and I didn't even think we'd see her in this series. Years ago, you served my father during the Clone Wars, and it's like, and you rescued me when I was a little kid. Maybe she doesn't remember, but everything with her, I kind of wanted that to wrap up in like 2 episodes, not be really the focus, but it still works. And another wasted opportunity, I thought, was with Qui-Gon. We didn't see him till the very end, and you figure they'll spend an episode together talking about stuff. Maybe not a full episode, but throughout. But it's like, you've been on Tatooine for how long? Let's see, Leia's 5 or 6 or 7? The kids were born, so about 7 years. And Yoda was going to teach him how to communicate with Qui-Gon. But it's like, well, what happened with that? It wasn't right away. When did he learn it? But, okay, Vader, great to see him. Like I said in some of my reviews of the movies, I still don't see Hayden under the helmet. It never worked. However, their first duel, I did like that Obi-Wan almost suffered the same fate as Anakin, getting burned like that. The fight, again, the shaky cam, I don't understand why. But their second fight's probably the best, just because of the end when he slashes the mask and we see Anakin's face and the voice box going in and out. But it doesn't work because the falling out didn't work between them, really. Like, Obi-Wan shouldn't be apologizing for anything. He warned Anakin, I have the high ground, don't try it. And then he slashed him up. He didn't force push him away or anything. I mean, he took care of him. And Obi-Wan, it's like he has nothing to apologize for. He's not sorry he did that to him. It's unfortunate, but otherwise the action, it's okay, but it's just ruined by the cinematography. The series, I mean, it's a good-looking series, the shots in that, but it's just the camera movements. And there are a lot of characters, but it's well-balanced. And, of course, Ewan, I mean, he's just perfect as Obi-Wan, so no complaints there. But I wish this series would continue. I don't understand why it's not. Limited, extremely limited, 6 episodes. But I didn't think him and Vader would fight twice. I liked that. And again, of course, the last fight. But, gosh, just the camera movements, I don't get it. It doesn't add anything to the fights. Makes it harder to follow. Because when the camera's moving, you're trying to focus on them with their sabers. But yeah, it wraps up after 6 episodes, and it's kind of like, okay. I don't know why they decided on that, but I would like to see another season or 50. But that's going to do it for my review of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the limited series on Disney+. Check it out. Let me know what you think. And next we'll be talking about the series Andor.
Master Windu, you're here sooner than I expected. I take it the coughing droid is dead. Uh-huh. All right, okay. You want to play games with me, huh? Let's see how you like this, huh? In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, your ass is under arrest, Chancellor. Huh? How do you like them apples? Hey, Jake. Jake! Come over here. Cuff this son of a bitch, huh?
Well, one of my early podcasts, I was asking the question, why Cassian Andor for a series? Nothing against the character. Diego is great. I raved about Rogue One. It's a masterpiece. Not just in the Star Wars universe, but in filmmaking as well. So when they announced this, I'm like, it's about him, but we already know, he lost everything. Terrible things he's done for the rebellion. We see that in the opening of Rogue One. So it's like, what else is there to tell about this character? What's interesting? Because then I was thinking, well, maybe I remember telling somebody, maybe he falls in love with this lady, and turns out she works for, the Empire. And he pretty much commits to them, but then decides like, well, all this killing and stuff, it's not worth it. And then leaves her and joins the rebellion. Just something where you're like, oh wow, he's not on the dark side per se, but he was with the Empire. He fell in love. So in the beginning of the series, I was kind of worried because in episode 1, it's like he's looking for his sister. I thought that could be interesting. He's a thief, stole a device, and then he's wanted for murder. And I'm like, that's a lot to tackle. Not over the first season, but just in general. Right away, it's like 3 things we're going to have to follow. And it's like, Episode 6 is where this series gets going for me. Great to see Andy Serkis. He's a brilliant character actor. All the way back to Lord of the Rings. And when they were in that prison making the parts, I knew those were for the Death Star. I was like, that's it. Because Cassian can't know about the Death Star. He finds out at the beginning of Rogue One, which is about 5 years after this. He finds out from that contact. So he's not even aware. I don't think he'll become aware that he made parts for the Death Star. So that's pretty cool. Everything with the prison, the escape, and the crew that Cassian, met up with. All very good actors and such. The action, nothing really stood out in the series, but it takes a while to pick up, get some steam. There are a lot of slow moments, characters just staring into space, thinking about stuff. And one of the problems is we don't really know what's going on with them. And, the directing was good. The story, it's just kind of like, well, is this about him finding his sister? No. Stop looking for her. He's a thief, that device. I'm like, I still don't know what it was. But it gets him recruited, and then he's wanted for murder. That seems to last the whole time, which I like, because he's on the run. And back to the prison episodes, I really liked when they found out what was going on at that lower level, or was it the one across from them, whichever, how they were just moving people around, like nobody got out. Kind of like The Island, that Michael Bay movie. Like, there is no island. Oh, that's with Ewan McGregor. How about that? Small world. But, with this series, because, like I said, it takes place 5 years before Rogue One. So we'll see how long after the first season the second one is. What happened to Andy's character. He's like, I can't swim. It's like, okay, good luck to you. But, yeah, again, I like the characters. But hopefully the next season will be a little more, not compelling, because this one did a good job of that, but it'll be a little faster. Because, those scenes with Mon, they're having their parties and such, and it's kind of like, why call this Andor? But it's just an underwhelming title, too. Andor, because it's like, are we going to see, is this going to be like the Phantom Menace? Like, are we going to meet him as a kid? What's going on? But there are a lot of great moments throughout the series, a lot of powerful moments, and some decent action. But yeah, I am curious where the next season is going to go. Apparently there are only 2 seasons. So just like Obi-Wan, pretty limited, which I don't really understand why. Like, why 5 years before Rogue One? And in 5 years, only 2 seasons to cover that? But we'll see. So I'm looking forward to the next season. And I figure they'll just call it Andor Season 2. I don't know. But anyways, that's it for this. And next we'll be talking about the Book of Boba Fett. And the Mandalorian I'm going to save for another time because I've only watched the first season. And I'm actually going to watch it again because I remember really liking it. But Andor I did like better than the Obi-Wan series overall. Not by too much, but I'd watch it again basically. Whereas Obi-Wan, it's like you watch it once and there's nothing really rewatchable as far as action in that. But yeah, let me know what you think and stay tuned for the review of the Book of Boba Fett.
Hey, sorry there, boy, about your hand. By the by, got some pretty bad news for you. Might be exciting. No, you can't tell with the old suit on, but Luke, I'm your father. Hey.
Well, the Book of Boba Fett I really enjoyed. I found it very compelling, very interesting. I liked all the characters. The action was great. I liked Boba's relationship with the Tusken Raiders. And the escape from the Sarlacc pits, a little too easy. I was kind of surprised by that. You figure he'd spend an entire episode trying to get out of there. Just like climbing, moving around, and all the goop and stuff. But, yeah, I didn't understand, the backlash in that against it. I didn't mind seeing, Boba talk a lot. I mean, at least they didn't go the Hux route, where it's like all of a sudden he's a comedian. But this series, I don't know, I'd still watch Andor over Obi-Wan and even this one. Maybe. I'm sure I'll watch the Book of Boba Fett again. But Andor just has like more powerful moments. But then again, Boba Fett has some better action sequences. But overall, I was really impressed with it. A lot of great shots, great story. And I don't think they're going to do another season of it based on the reviews, which is unfortunate. But we'll see what happens. You've never heard of the... what's the name of that ship? The Millennial Falcon, huh? Prove it! See, a big problem I have is different directors with different visions. When you have them working kind of on the same project, like a trilogy, for example. Say a Star Wars trilogy. Because like I talked about, I mean, Rian Johnson made a great film. The Last Jedi is a film, the way it's presented. It's all the shots are beautiful, the music score, the acting is great. It's just the story doesn't connect with The Force Awakens. So in turn, The Rise of Skywalker, people were like, what is this? And Whereas if JJ had directed all three and then Ryan gets his own trilogy, I think we'd be more satisfied, because I just don't buy that Palpatine was in the works, because they would have hinted at it. Just at his return. Not mentioning like, oh, maybe Rey's Palpatine. And, whenever they do the next trilogy, we'll see what happens. Because I urge them to take the Russo brothers approach, which I talked about earlier. Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame. Those four are just all... they're all masterpieces. People rave about those. Arguably the best of the Avengers movies. Best Captain America movie. Or movies, rather. And they just kept banging those out. One after the other. Did a great job. And I'm not saying like other directors would make them worse or anything, but it's just, again, different visions, different ideas. And when you're given creative control, it depends if there's like an outline for the movies to follow. Or they're just like, you can do whatever you want. Rey's parents, we don't really care. Luke's lightsaber, or Anakin's saber, where it came from, we just don't care. We're not going to address that at all. And some things, it's just like, so Rey's a Palpatine, how did he survive? You know what? We're not really concerned. Just put him in the movie. And it's just, everything's just so out of place. It's hard to connect those movies. So maybe Rogue Squadron will set a new series of movies, films in motion. Or be part of a new trilogy. Who knows? I love the title alone. Rogue One, Rogue Squadron. So we'll see what happens.
You're telling me that's not a moon, it's a space station. Are you serious? Is that what you do, huh?
Who can forget Spaceballs? One of the best comedies, parodies. And they were able to do a lot. I'm not sure. I'd like to be a fly on the wall during the meeting where they talk about licensing and copyright and such. But it's one of those movies, it's strange because like those 2000s to 2010, they did like epic movie and superhero and stuff. Like those for some reason just never work. Even now, even kids are like, what is this? But Spaceballs, you watch it, it shouldn't work. Because it's just so campy and, the names in that, like Dark Helmet and Barf, but it's just so silly. And I probably watched it last time like a year or two ago. It still holds up. It's just so goofy. And you're like, why does this work? But great parody. I know they've always talked about doing a sequel. That movie was released in 1987. So almost 40 years ago. But the music was great. John Candy, of course. Just a stellar cast. And Bill Pullman, I don't know if he's done a comedy since. I don't think so. But, I wrote that down after writing about Jane Silent Bob Strike Back. Because I'm thinking about movies that would parody it. Except for Fanboys, because that one, is about them going to see the movie, like steal a copy of The Phantom Menace. And that one was great too. I remember when I first saw that, I was laughing so hard. They were at that statue site, and Seth Rogen's character was there. And when the van pulled up and it's going, I was cracking up so hard. That movie was so silly. But yeah, Spaceballs, it's purely funny, which is another reason it works. Because some comedies, you'll have like a love story which gets in the way. And this one, there's that love story, but it doesn't like affect the tone or anything. It's just campy and goofy. But what did you think of it? Do you watch it like every year, every several years if it's on TV. Did you see it in theaters? I don't think I did. I was like 4 when that came out, but yeah, classic parody.
I mean, what would you guys think about, maybe like a comedy night in the Death Star? I don't have to open up a club or anything, nothing that extreme, but just be nice. I mean, you guys are out there all day, you're fighting your battles, and then you come home and you go to sleep, and, you guys need some relief in that, There's no real entertainment, there's no TVs. Are you serious? It'd be great, though, Otherwise, you come home, take off your suit, the old lady's like, gee, darling, I'd like to watch some comedy before we go to bed.
Oh, no, honey, I gotta get up early. Go out there, do the same thing.
That'd be a lot of fun, Could have open mic night, I'm sure. Oh, clones, okay. Oh, never mind.
So, Qui-Gon and Darth Maul. Why no series for them, live action? I don't understand that. Arguably, the best characters out of the Phantom Menace both met their demise. Until you watch Solo, a Star Wars story, we see Darth Maul, his cameo, but that didn't seem to go anywhere, because I don't think there's going to be a Solo sequel. But still, I mean, of course, Obi-Wan, he has a series, it's like, oh, for sure. But why Andor over Qui-Gon? I'm curious. So maybe we'll see a series, with Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon. I'd like to see his relationship with Dooku. They had a falling out. Hey, I'm not into all this dark side stuff. I'll see you later. Dooku, how he got seduced by Palpatine. There's a lot to explore there. And we know Liam, I mean, of course he can carry a movie, a series, anything he's in. So I'd like to see that. Well, after the recent trilogy, you could argue fan service would have been a good idea for the Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. But it's just that second chapter kind of messed everything up. I mean, creatively it is different. You didn't expect Snoke to die, Rey's parents to be revealed to be nobodies. But even in 3, you try and retcon stuff, but just one of those that ends and you're like, oh, did we win? Yay? Because I like, if you have a spin-off or something, an independent story, and you don't know where it's going, like that works. But with this, you want it more linear. Like, you think of the 3 movies and it's just seamless. For example, people theorizing that Rey is a descendant of Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon, something like that. And other things, like Finn. So, he fights Kylo, yes. Great misdirect. But what was the plan with him? He can use the Force, he feels it. I still think that's what he was trying to tell Rey in the 3rd one, which he never did for whatever reason, the last movie. But just little things like that, the connections. But they're all very entertaining otherwise. But there was really no fan service in the last 2. Lord Tyrannus, wonderful to see you. Welcome back. Hey, how you doing there, Palpatine? Good to see you, old friend. Good to be home. The Force is with us. It said it's happy to be here. And, I have good news and a little bit of bad news. The ship, the one I just flew in on, boy, are my arms tired. Sorry, you probably heard that one 1,000 times. I think it's leaking oil, but I'm not sure because we were in space. Anywho, yes. I have great news. The war has started. Everything is going as planned. Yes, I don't have any photos. We forgot to get video, but I promise you it has started. And, oh boy, it's going to be a whopper. They got those thin robots out there, and the clones doing a bunch of damage, and they're... Yeah, how are you? Well, I think we'll see a Jon Favreau trilogy one day, along with the Rian Johnson trilogy. I mean, with Favreau, look alone what he's done for, The Mandalorian. How viral that goes. I mean, it's incredible. The Force Awakens, I think BB-8, that caught on pretty well. The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, there was the Reylo thing, but nothing that really stood out like to that level. But who would you like to see direct a trilogy, or even a Star Wars movie? I remember the early YouTube days, there was this channel dedicated to lightsaber duels, and those guys did a great job. I remember you look forward to them. They had maybe a couple a year, and great effects at the time. We're talking around the time HD maybe came out, but those are good times on YouTube. I almost forgot about that because I haven't watched those in well over a decade.
Master Windu, you fought gallantly, worthy of recognition in the archives of the Jedi Order. Surrender, and your lives will be spared.
Nothing against Family Guy, I just never really got into it, except when they released the Blue Harvest. Same with like Robot Chicken when they do Star Wars parodies. That's stuff I would watch. Those are very entertaining. And I remember buying Family Guy. I think this is before streaming or maybe around the time it started. But it was a 3-part, I remember, the Blue Harvest. And I remember buying those, I think on DVD, because I wanted to see him so bad. But very funny stuff.
Oh, I'd like to join you, but Mama said,
don't join the dark side, son.
And I've been a longtime fan of Eddie Izzard's. Check out his Star Wars bits. The Death Star Canteen. The one, I think it was about U.S. versus British movies or something. But on the Death Star, it's like, just guys walking around, opening doors. Oh, hello, oh. What is it, Lieutenant Sebastian? It's the rebels, sir. They're here. My God, man, do they want tea? And like the canteen thing, you think like, oh yeah, the stormtroopers have to eat. On Camino, when Obi-Wan was visiting, we saw the clones eating. But very funny stuff. Check it out on YouTube. Buy Eddie's specials. Hilarious. So one big issue I had with the sequel trilogy that wasn't really addressed in the movies at all, but never seemed to get much steam outside of that. What did Kylo have to do to get a Darth name? He has his red saber. He's done a lot of damage. Gave himself to the dark side. But even Anakin, when he was kind of swearing himself in to Palpatine, he didn't get his saber, his red saber, but he got Darth Vader's name. So I'm kind of confused by that. What's the order? Why is Palpatine just like, you got to do this, but, before you get this, but now I'm going to change it? Because Kylo, nothing against the name, but it's kind of a kid's name. So we heard Kylo Ren, I'm like, huh. I mean, we know it's Ben Kenobi, but still. Like, he chose that name. He was given that name by Snoke. What's going on with that? So let me know what you think. Leave a comment or a voice message.
You made it. I'm so thrilled. The map to Skywalker. We know you have it. You're gonna hand it over. You see my dogs, right? Go get them.
I still remember this like it was yesterday. So 2004, we're hyped. No YouTube. Internet is, not much on it. Social media is not really broken through yet. Point being, on the news, they're going to show the first trailer for Revenge of the Sith. And I'm psyched. And, it was like an hour-long episode. And of course they put it at the end. I was like, oh, I watched all that news for nothing. But those times you had to wait. But I like that now you can watch a trailer once it drops, YouTube, and you'll see it, for the US, for other countries. I love that, but I still remember I'm just waiting and waiting. Like, coming up soon, the first trailer for Revenge of the Sith. And check out one of the links below to my Ron Dude site. Before The Force Awakens came out, I wrote a scene featuring Finn and Luke and some other names. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I'm very proud of it. And so check that out. Again, link in the description. The Force Awakens, it's my original screenplay. And I'd love to hear from you what you think of it. Let's not stand on ceremony here, Master Skywalker. Your precious armory, gratefully accepted. We will need it. Ooh, an X-Wing fighter. No, that's mine. I've got dibs. I remember when NSYNC were in talks to be in Attack of the Clones during the final battle on Geonosis. I remember, even at the time, because I grew up, with the whole boy band generation, and it was all cool at the time, but it's kind of like, really, in Star Wars? I figured they'd play some of the Jedi, but I don't know what happened with that, but pretty interesting, because even at the time, we're still like, really? Can they act? And was George a fan? One of the producers? What's going on? But that's funny to look back on. I wonder if they actually shot anything. All right, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. The first Star Wars movie that I saw. Earlier I talked about seeing it in theaters with my sister. 1997. We saw the special edition. And that movie, that's just one of the greatest starters for a franchise ever. And I'll watch it if it's on TNT or something, if there's nothing else on. It's not really rewatchable, but that being said, I've seen it more or less 100 times probably all the way through, because growing up on that, it's like you want to go home, watch the VHS again and again. But great setup, not too complicated, a lot of characters, great balance. And of course, next I'll talk about Empire, because what they did with that, you didn't even suspect anything in A New Hope in Episode 4. Because when Ben tells Luke about his father betrayed and murdered by Darth Vader, you don't think I wonder if that's the same person, and if it's Luke's father. And just like I talked about in my review of The Force Awakens, the whole parents thing, and how Force Awakens basically a copy of this movie, even down to the relationships, family stuff. Because with Luke, we're not really sure what's going on. He lives with his aunt and uncle on Tatooine. But as far as action goes, of course, the trench run at the end, that's great. Especially the special edition. They have, more X-Wing fighters and some of the shots look better. Some of them still look terrible, but, at the time, it's even more fun to watch how they did that stuff. The blue screen with the Falcon, just any ship in general. But a great setup just for everything, a whole franchise. Look at what Star Wars is today. It's just massive everything. Toys, movies, books, series. And some of the series are doing better than, movies. But he just created a universe. And A New Hope, it is watchable all the way through, because it's exciting to go on that journey. But me, I pretty much, in these movies, I just like to watch the action. But if you told me, hey, you have to sit through this movie, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. And especially seeing Luke's journey from this movie to Empire and Return of the Jedi, I mean, just how he evolves. It's pretty incredible. And, of course, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia. There are just so many great characters in this movie. But up next, I'll be talking about Empire. So let's get right into that.
The other that Yoda spoke of is your sister.
Hey, hope it's not old Leia over there. She kind of kissed me. Hey there, feller. I didn't kiss her, okay? But that's not gonna like mess things up, is it? Like, we're still gonna win, right?
Okay, back in the theater, 1997, we just saw A New Hope. Now The Empire Strikes Back. Great title, one of the best in the series. Maybe the best. Revenge of the Sith is really good. I remember originally Return of the Jedi was going to be called Revenge of the Jedi, but it's kind of like, Jedi, I don't think they seek revenge. But Empire totally blew me away, took me by surprise. That finale. And I couldn't handle, I talked about this earlier in the podcast, but that was the first time seeing dismemberment on a human, because I remember now in A New Hope, Obi-Wan, he chops that creature's arm off. And that didn't even make me flinch or anything for some reason. I guess because it was an alien creature, but in this, Luke, hand chopped off, and the moments we didn't see coming at all. Keep in mind, this is 97. We're talking very early internet, like dial-up, AOL. You had to install the disc and all that stuff. So we're sitting there and we're like, no, Luke, I am your father. It's like, what? And I'm thinking, this is PG? Just chopped off his hand, and good lightsaber duel. Better than the one between Obi-Wan and Darth in A New Hope. And, of course, Lando's great. And just everything, their relationship with Han. And, of course, Han and Leia, their relationship. How it was just a slow burn. Slow build-up. And it works. I love you. I know. It's a great line. I just wish that Anakin and Padme, them falling in love was more believable. Because, this is just the second movie, just like Attack of the Clones is the second movie in that trilogy. So it could have worked easily, but it's also the jump from The Phantom Menace to, 10 years later in Attack of the Clones. But Empire, the battle on Hoth with the speeders, of course the AT walkers, that's very entertaining. Not my favorite, but I really like that. And of course the finale, I think I read somewhere, maybe the first movie with a cliffhanger ending, maybe just in that genre. I remember reading that somewhere. I don't know if that's true. But just a great setup for Return of the Jedi. And Luke getting his new hand. Leia being his sister, we didn't know. They kiss. Now you look back and it's like, oof. But it's a great film. Everything with Yoda works great. And there's just a great balance. Yes, like the Force. And it works so well. Luke training, going off to take on Vader. And a lot of parallels, again, with the sequel trilogy. Because in The Last Jedi, Rey leaves Luke to go to Kylo Ren. Or to Ben, to try to save him. So a lot of parallels. And it's very original, of course, because nobody saw that coming. Arguably one of the best sequels ever. And just a great movie on its own, too. But next we'll be diving into Return of the Jedi.
You turned her against me, Charles. I mean, Obi-Wan.
Oh, you've done that yourself, old friend.
You will not take her from me.
Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. Just ask my son, H.W.
If you're not with me, old friend, then you're my enemy.
So that's how it's going to go down. Well, I'll tell you what. I have a milkshake. You have a milkshake. We both have straws.
I drink your milkshake. You stay away from my milkshake, Charles. I mean, Obi-Wan.
Well, before seeing Return of the Jedi, I remember asking my dad all about the movie, because the third one was going to come out. We just seen the first two in theaters, and Return of the Jedi, probably my favorite out of the three as far as rewatchability. There's a lot of great action, everything on Jabba's barge, the big rescue operation, and of course the Endor space battle. I love watching that supercut on YouTube. That and the space battle from Rogue One are my favorites out of the franchise. Did a great job. This movie, it's, again, just like Empire is a perfect sequel, this one as well. That's why this trilogy, it works so well, because it's easy to follow. You see Luke's journey and trying to redeem Darth Vader. And what happens in the end, it works. I mean, the Ewok stuff and the musical numbers, that stuff I don't really mind. I don't know if there was any pressure from the studio. Maybe they were like, PG for Empire, but, make it more kid-friendly in the third one. And Palpatine, what happened to him when he was thrown off into the abyss, into space or wherever, whatever happened to him. But, then they bring him back for The Rise of Skywalker, and it just no explanation, really? And some people have said, and this is, I think, true, about the prophecy of the One, it's all undone if Palpatine didn't die. And even though Anakin, quote-unquote, killed him, it's but he survived. And he just found Exegol. How did he get there? I figured by a ship, and then he starts building a new empire, but it doesn't ruin this movie at all. It's kind of like you just want to go off of this trilogy, and, some of the other movies, it's yeah, that doesn't work for me. It doesn't add up. But, yeah, I remember, walking around at school, and I'm in my head, I'm Luke Skywalker, that energy. That version of Luke, we kind of wanted to see in The Last Jedi. Maybe he's still positive, but it's sad because he's alone, because he gave up on people. I think that would have worked better. And, in The Last Jedi, it's you're not really rooting for him. It's not the Luke that we remember, which I get, but at the same time, again, imagine if he were so positive and then you felt bad for him. It's why are you here? And then we find out about the falling out with Kylo and them burning the Jedi Temple. But this version of Luke in Return of the Jedi, just a great presence. And you're really rooting for him. And then the revelation about Leia being his sister, I really like that. And I don't know if that's the way it was originally written, just because of that kiss in Empire. Maybe that was to throw that off, so people would be like, what?
Leia's my sister. It's yes, and you kissed her, Luke.
Oops. But this one, great finale. And yeah, great battles on Endor as well. That big final battle, everything with the speeder bikes, For the time, I'm sure that blew everyone away, like 1983. Because I believe they would walk through the forest with cameras and just film probably for miles. And then they play it on the blue screen and they just like speed it up. But a lot of those shots hold up, you know. Again, I haven't seen the movies in 4K or anything, but for the time, it's like, that doesn't look too bad. But great finale to the trilogy. Very satisfying. But let me know what you think of the original trilogy. And that is it for my reviews. So stay tuned for more fun stuff, and leave a voice message on Anchor or leave a comment elsewhere. Again, I'll have all my links in the description.
I might consider joining y'all if you aren't so crazy going around killing people. Tell me about the benefits. Dental, health. What about my contact lenses?
Luke, where are you, man? I got your power converters. I've been waiting years, man. Shoot, buddy. Shoot, buddy.
Mikey, what are you doing? You don't walk onto the Death Star and talk to a man like Darth Vader like that. So let me get this straight. You're building this, space station, and what is it, space? The Death Star. That's good. I like that. You're gonna need a lot of workers, a lot of supplies. I understand this. I'd like to be a partner in this operation. But we must agree on one thing. What do you think about a casino?
Yes, Finn, you betrayed us, a traitor, yes. Oh, I love this story. It's so compelling, yes. Now, you better give me that saber. It belongs to me. Actually, it doesn't, but I want it, yes. Oh, you turned it on, huh? Yeah, watch your hands there, huh?
Are you ready for this, Gelman? There I am aboard the Death Star. I say to the officer, you may fire when ready. This guy's just standing around. I said, what are you doing? He said, Regis, I'm not ready. Hey, pilot, lower the ship. We have to go back for Padme.
Anakin, don't let your personal feelings get in the way, yeah?
I don't care. I can't leave her.
Anakin, if we catch Count Dooku right now, we can end this war. Do you understand?
I don't care. Lower the ship.
Anakin, you could be expelled from the Jedi Order. They'll just send you on your way with your little bag full of snacks. Your robe, maybe your lightsaber. I heard they charge a return fee, a packaging fee.
Obi-Wan, you don't understand. I've fallen in love with politics, yes. I can't wait to marry, I can't wait to bring her home to Naboo, where she's from. You remember Naboo? Naboo?
Anakin, listen to me. We got to get to Dooku. There's no time. There's nothing you could say to convince me otherwise. Pilot, follow that speeder.
Obi-Wan, she owes me money.
Pilot, turn the bloody ship around. Oh my stars and garters. That took me like hours to get all those impressions, everything finalized. I recorded segments. I did one like 9-minute sketch with George Lucas pitching The Phantom Menace to Liam Neeson. And I realized like doing impressions for a long time, like one voice for a while, you kind of slip in and out of it. So I decided to just record a bunch like improv mini sketches and that, like if other actors audition, and then put those throughout the episode. But that is going to do it. I am going to rewatch The Mandalorian Season 1, and then of course 2 and 3, which just premiered. So that'll save for later. I don't want to review that because I haven't seen everything yet. So that wouldn't be right. But yeah, very long episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear from you. If you're listening on Anchor, you can leave a voice message. Otherwise, all the links in the description to my socials and that. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. I had a great time just jotting down every memory, every note I could think of. And yeah, stay tuned. I'll have some more Star Wars stuff, even though this is everything. We'll just say it's part 1. So that's it for this episode. I appreciate your time, and may the Force be with us all.